I don't think you go to school to be a therapist. I think you're born as one.
Behind the scenes, what are we as therapists talking about?
The idea isn't what you do, but why do you do it?
The why is almost always more interesting than the what.
That's the unsaid thing.
Oh, I'm saying it. I'm going there. Buzz. Today we're talking Buzzwords. I got Matt Christian to my right.
Johnny hits him with the sound effects from the
I
beginning.
got Craig James to my left. And I'm Johnny, don't call me Dr.
Motown
Pierce.
Zone. The great Johnny Pierce, ladies and gentlemen.
The great Johnny Pierce. Oh,
Two
I like that.
mere mortals, and then we got Johnny Pierce.
Oh, I wish. But
Now,
yes.
Johnny, you didn't have to dress up so much. This is a pretty informal thing. You didn't have to
Hey,
dress
man.
so
Any
so
Given
formally.
Sunday is a legendary movie. Willie Beeman's
Beeman.
a legendary character.
You're not
I just
wrong.
want to be in the same breath.
You're not wrong.
I am mad that I didn't get the memo on the white shoes, though. You know, you guys made a big fuss about Jordans and all this. I don't wear Jordans. I think they're particularly ugly. But I went with the freakiest pair of shoes I got in the lineup. And then you guys come in
goodness.
here beige and white. It's just,
I didn't want to have to break this to you, but Craig and I have a text chain without you. That we talk
it
about
appears
sometimes.
so. I mean, even the pants appear to be the same.
No.
What
similar.
brand is this?
They're all dark pants.
Yeah, well, at least we got that part together.
So what are we doing today, guys?
We are
What's
doing
the
buzzwords
buzzwords.
in psychology.
Yeah.
Words that we've either heard in our sessions, sometimes to our detriment, because as soon as we hear them, we may cringe. And sometimes in our clinical meetings, sometimes on social media. These are all words that you will know. We're not going to be, hitting you with anything that you haven't heard, but you might learn something because we got some history to some of these.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is talking about what people nowadays call like therapy speak. When they hear
Yes.
these people in their lives using a lot of these kind of therapy terms, and sometimes for better or worse. So we're gonna go through some of that. Maybe give a little bit of history, riff on it a little bit.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Some fun.
For those of you who are new here, don't forget to click like and subscribe. We really need that to
Follow,
let people
leave a
know.
comment. Yeah,
we
appreciate
love
it.
it. We love it. We love it. We appreciate the love and affection that we are getting from you all, and we want to give you the best product. So it helps. It helps.
I've got nothing to say. That's really well done.
I do what I
just
can.
here.
I do what I can. So we're gonna pick our first buzzword. I think Craig's gonna do the honors.
Well, all
Got 'em
right.
laid out. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. It's like we're like passing the collection plate at church. I'm having flashbacks.
Wait, you're supposed to put stuff in the collection plate, not take stuff out.
Not how I did
What
it,
has
Johnny.
Matt been doing at church all these years?
Johnny's not a businessman like I am. It's about the bottom line, my friend. Yeah, you're right. What a comment was that on me? Reminds me of church.
So what you got there, Matt? Oh, how about that?
Narcissism. Yeah. So this is an interesting one, and one that that people throw out a lot. And I've definitely heard just people throwing out a lot. So we'll get to it. But in terms of the origin of the term, because I was looking into it a little bit. So so it actually comes from ancient Greek, myth or literature of this guy Narcissus, who was this incredibly good-looking guy. Imagine like a younger Johnny Pierce type.
I was going to say Matt Christian, but
Well,
okay.
I didn't want to say it, but I mean,
Okay. I'll say it for
we
you.
were all thinking it. The viewers were thinking it. Craig, be cool. So yeah, who was like incredibly good looking. All these people, wanted him, but he rebuked all of any other advances. And then one day he caught like a glimpse of himself or his reflection for the first time in like a pool of water, but not realizing it was a reflection, that it was him that he was looking at. And he was so enraptured with the beauty of this person he was looking at that fell in love and then kind of deteriorated by this obsession of looking at himself.
Couldn't look away.
Couldn't look away. Yeah. So I think there's
Is
some
that why
different
you don't have
versions.
mirrors in your office?
Craig, I walk by a reflective store window. My afternoon shot, my friend. I'm there. I'm in it all the way. So I can relate. So, and then from there, it was something that was used, that story, in like Renaissance art and Middle Ages stuff, kind of as a cautionary tale, contrasting it with like Christian values. I think was a lot of it of like self-sacrifice and humility and stuff. And then I don't know all of the details of how it kind of came into the world of psychology. I saw some different reports of who the psychologist was initially, but in the kind of early 1900s, late 1800s, I think the term was initially used by a psychologist to describe, this is an interesting one, a condition where one treats one's own body with the same sexual love usually shown to others.
Oh,
should we let that hang out
I
there for a
did not
second?
know that was a history. Well, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
let's let that
different.
sit there. I feel like this guy was maybe like he had like a
might have
son
had
who
a-
was just entering puberty.
A
And he was-
psychodynamic background sounds very Freudian.
and then from there, Freud, to your point, Freud expanded on the idea and was kind of framing, among other things, as kind of part of normal development of kind of the narcissism of the baby, even the infant, and going forward. And then
Who
others
thought
were
that
looking
Freud
at.
could have the toned down version of something?
That's such a good point.
Like,
Yeah, you
that
thought-
sounds way more acceptable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a baby. It doesn't have
Yeah.
a reference for other people.
I mean, Freud, I'm not an expert in the history of Freudian thought, but I mean, he probably took it sexual at some point.
At some point, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
think about his
yeah.
stages of development.
Yeah, if he did like an extra good line of cocaine that day, like, yeah, he was
That
in
bump was hard.
it. So then from there, there was then talked about more in the spirit of this kind of like personality trait, and then developed over time into this talking about it in the sense of like a personality disorder. So that's some of the history around it. What are your all's thoughts about what you hear, or even your thoughts about like what does it even mean clinically for someone to be narcissist?
I think the trait part is something worth kind of speaking on, because by everybody's theory, although it wasn't articulated there, if you look into it, you'll find that the suspicion and the expectation is that all people possess traits. So if you come across somebody who seems to kind of interact with you in a way that doesn't humanize you, doesn't make you feel like a person, that person may be exhibiting traits of narcissism. To get the disorder, because it's a personality disorder, this is something that develops over the course of a lifetime and is expressed over the course of that lifetime. It can be more mild as a person gets older, but ultimately, like, a trait versus the actual disorder, like, that distinction needs to be made. And oftentimes in the conversations that are going on today, I don't believe it is. I think it's just this kind of whitewashed label just thrown on folks. You disagree with me. You didn't treat me exactly the way I wanted you to treat me. You upset me in some way. And therefore you must be a narcissist because you didn't take me into account. And that is going too far, too fast.
Right. It's kind of used as like a thing of to like make like a sound like clinical way of saying someone was a jerk almost, or someone, you don't like
Right.
somebody. Yeah.
Well, it makes
Right.
it easier. It's easier for me to call you a narcissist versus reflecting on myself. And what are my challenges, and where do I agree and disagree?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that narcissistic folks don't exist. They do, but they are statistically not possibly as probable as we have become accustomed to hearing about them. I know that there's a particular social media movement where there's a criticism around the use of the term, especially with ladies. And I want to make it very clear. That's that movement. That's not what I'm getting at. But in that movement, the idea is that kind of after a breakup, in a way to try to help cope with the fact that the breakup happened or the experience in the breakup, that any ex-partner, namely a male partner, was a narcissist. Like, that's just what he was.
Oh, wow.
All of them are that way. And as a result of that, they are the problem. I have no reflecting to do at the end of this relationship. I was treated poorly throughout, and I was only able to escape because of, some misfortune, and I was stuck. I was made to stay because of the manipulation that was going on. And what it does is it sits the person in the seat of the victim, that they had to stay, they had been brainwashed, this person was completely unhealthy, there was no kind of healthy traits about them, and now I, of course, have trauma associated with that. I think that social media movement is not representative of the entire population, but the ease with which the term is used, I do feel has become far too generalized. So I just wanted to make that distinction, because we're not talking exclusively about that pocket of social media. We're talking at large.
Well, I think it's easier to characterize somebody as a narcissist because of the traits, because they evoke an emotional response in me that I either don't know how to deal with, never recognized, or whatever the case may be. I don't even know what the percentage of people who fit criteria for narcissistic personality disorder is, but it's got to be low.
Very low.
Because it takes a long. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
I don't know.
There's another group, so it's not just something that's exclusive there. Like the beauty of social media is I experience it. I'm on Instagram. I have a professional account and a personal account. Good luck. But I've seen it attached to that situation I just mentioned, but also the narcissistic mom. So the mom that has to control every feature of their child's life, be that a young man or a young woman. Mom has to dictate all things, must know all things. Everybody kind of bends to the will of mom. That's something I've seen. And I've actually seen people in our field talking about this person must have had a narcissistic mom. And I'm like, I don't know how productive that is to make such a general statement. Like if you don't sit with somebody and you don't work with somebody to extrapolate what kind of personality they had from the reports of somebody who interacted with them, that feels like a very big stretch for somebody in our field. And I would like actually for it to be condoned as or condemned as something that we need to stop doing because we don't sit with these people. How do we go so far in defining them? You know, you haven't met that person's mom. You haven't talked to that person's mom and gotten that person's mom's history. So how can you be so sure based on your interactions with their child exactly who they were as a parent? That this child is the completely accurate reporter of all things.
Well, I think what it allows you to do is bypass emotional understanding and just label behavior.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
We get to label what you do, not why.
Right.
And so when you throw the characterization on that, you're ignoring all the other stuff that's happening. But you presented this topic. What are your thoughts on it? If any more?
Well, I mean, one thing that might be helpful just to talk about, like, what is narcissism?
Yeah.
That we didn't touch on. It's something that I feel like people have a kind of a intuitive sense of what is meant by it. And so jump in with any other thing, but like, you know, a sense of like real grandiosity or inflated sense of self, this need for admiration. The lack of empathy, I think, is a big distinguishing feature of it.
And yet, with that, you know, it's often commented that narcissists lack empathy, but if they do, and I have my doubts about it, how is it then that they conjure up all this praise and all this love? There seems to be something that they're able to tap into to get others to fill their bucket. So I would say that maybe it's not the most pro-social version of empathy,
right?
But there seems to be some awareness that if I do these things, you'll have to do this. There is some thinking about what the other person's experience might be. It's just not. Yes, it just seems to be more transactional.
Machiavellian, transactional. Yes, that's a good distinction.
And I think that's why we have to, as professionals, talk about these layers and these nuances, because that's not what's being thought about when people are saying the term and they're just applying it to whoever pissed them off in the last 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of my thoughts about it, it's pretty similar to what you all say. I hear people talk about it a lot, the most in reference to like their ex, their ex-romantic partner, and I hear the label given to men a lot too.
Well, at one point in time, it was the term du jour. So for the guy, it was narcissism. For the lady, it was borderline.
Right.
And I think times are changing where people are trying
the guy's borderline, the woman's narcissist now?
I've been hearing more of that. I've been seeing more of that. I've seen like little PowerPoint slides of what to look for in a narcissistic woman as people are going out into the dating world and being rejected.
As a positive?
No, of... This is how you recognize this is a red flag kind of thing.
I thought I'm looking for that in a relationship.
Well, you're looking for it so that you can get away from it.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting about it. So my overall thoughts is very similar to what you all were saying before of how it can be used, in ways that aren't as productive, kind of dismissive of the other person. It allows one to get off the hook by using this kind of clinical, medical type of language. Yeah. But an interesting one that I've heard other people comment on as well is on the level of society, socially, are we becoming, at least in America, like more and more narcissistic through the technology, through the way people engage with technology, in all kinds of ways. It's almost like everyone's their own celebrity or something. Everyone's trying to. So it's interesting thought.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Matt.
Ooh,
I'm so glad he brought it up.
You opened that one up, didn't you?
Maybe there's a bigger conversation than maybe a podcast in and of itself.
We have these phones, right?
Yes.
There's a camera right here that faces out to the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a smartphone right now that doesn't have a front-facing camera.
Mm-hmm.
The term selfie, which our good friend the Kardashians have built an empire on, it encouraged people to take pictures of themselves. It is a common practice for people to take a lot of pictures of themselves. More and more people are doing little videos. This is some of the methods we use to get information out about our field. How's that any different than our good friend Narcissist staring at the pool of water?
Oh.
Yeah. And looking at like, well, what is the downside of narcissism for someone? I think it speaks a lot to, I think, the over focus on self being, in my view at least, one of the core things for a lack of well-being. Mm-hmm. That creates things like anxiety, depression, and then other kind of more antisocial behaviors on a relational level.
Here's what I would say. I wouldn't even say social media. I would say our digital age has given us so much so fast that we haven't been able to process it. And so we're just moving really, really quickly just to get to the next point, just to be first, just to be right. Actually, just to be first. We're not even trying to be right.
Who cares about being right anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're moving so quickly that by the time we evaluate what's been said or done, we move to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where we're headed, right? I as I think about it, you pose a really good question. Are we just creating a society of narcissists?
And if we are
in the digital age, and then what does that look like, relationship-wise, emotionally, socially, all of the other stuff? So,
if we are, then has the diagnosis itself lost its value? If we're saying to people from the get-go that you are special, that you need to be catered to, that everybody needs to get a trophy, that we should protect you from all hurt, harm, and danger at all times. You shouldn't have to bump your head. Crown princes, crown princesses, we're creating them. If we're doing that as a society, is it any wonder then when people come of age that they aren't as empathic as maybe we would want them to be? If you haven't taught your child how to consider the mind of the other, how to consider the feelings of the other, how to value those things, and they lack that skill, is that a demonstration of a disorder at that point? Or is that just a matter of lack of skills training?
So then are you asking then about nature versus nurture? Because if we the responsible parties of the youth are not saying no and requiring these things, then it's no longer a disorder. It's society. And as a friend of mine said, that's your Frankenstein. You got to kill it. Yeah. I don't know. All right.
What do you got, Craig? What'd you pull?
Life coach.
Life coach.
Life coach.
I mean, you're the perfect person to pull that.
I might be, because this has been an issue for me for a long time.
This is lobbing it across the plate.
It's
for
Craig time. Here we go.
Home run shot. Kicked off in I think early 1980s. Is the history. I did a little history on mine as well. Emerged in the 1980s. Really, the idea was to assist people with strengths, passions, convictions, values, and things of that nature. I think my struggle with life coaching is really a two-part piece, maybe one. Well, what's the difference between a life coach and a therapist, right? So in the simplistic way of looking at it is therapists work with people on mental health and emotional needs. Life coaching is about goals. But isn't that what we as therapists do? So I think the bigger piece for me, though, with the life coach is as a therapist, we have requirements and standard expectations, and we have to do CEs to continue with our license and things of that nature. What I found was that, which is interesting to me, and I thought about it but didn't know about it until I looked it up. There are no regulations by most states for a life coach. There's no standard practice. So you may have a certification as a life coach Who created the certification? What are the requirements in terms of staying within scope of practice and things of that nature? So I wonder if you're trying to help people and you're a life coach, if you really mean it, have some conviction and commit to a program, and I will be sarcastic and it's not trying to offend anyone, or maybe you'll be offended. What does it take to be a life coach? Is that 25, 50 true, false questions? Right? What does that mean? And I've always asked the question, not to you want to help people, great, but what's it take to be a life coach? Right? That's
Reminds me of like my brother got married. He had my dad do the be the officiant.
The officiant, yeah.
So he had to become like a reverend or something
Yeah.
like that. And so he did the online thing where it's like the qualifications to become a reverend at the Church of Online, whatever, was $25, and that was it actually, just $25.
So she really
something like
made
that. It made me think of that. I don't mean that's how every life coaches are, but like yeah.
Now, your dad got cheaped because if you guys had done it in D.C., he wouldn't even had to get the $25. I was my own officiate at my second wedding, and I didn't have to pay for anything as far as like a certification to be an officiant. In D.C., you can be your own officiate. I think you can do it in a couple other places as well.
So I love folks who say, I want to get better. But you want to find a life coach. What are the regulations to be a life coach? So I'm going to pass it on because thoughts on the topic. Because
Can I ask you a question actually?
Yeah.
Just my own ignorance of it. Like,
Go for it.
What do life coaches do? Like, what? I don't even mean that in a sarcastic way.
No,
I mean that in a very sincere way.
You're going down the place that I was going to go with it, which
I
is
genuinely don't know. Like
when you were explaining, and I was listening very closely because I like history. I really do appreciate history. I think history gives us some type of insight into kind of what was the ultimate, mission or vision or spirit of something. So the spirit of life coaching, to me, from what I heard from you and what I've heard from those who I've come across who happen to practice it and what I've heard in passing, is someone commits to you to hold you accountable. Like at its core, the spirit of it is that someone commits to you to hold you accountable.
Okay.
So whether that's in the gym, whether that's with a diet, whether that's with something with school, whatever the case may be, and maybe this isn't every single coach. Maybe it's not like, I know executive functioning coach is a new term that's out there. I've been seeing requests for referrals for that in our little
the listservs.
Listservs. Yeah. So like this is new to me. I need to get hip. But at the core, at the spirit of it, someone is being committed to you about you being active in whatever goals you're trying to achieve.
Correct.
They're holding you accountable for that. When you said therapist, what do we do? I think that does overlap quite a bit because in a sense, we are holding our clients accountable and responsible for their mental and emotional wellness.
Correct.
So it just feels disproportionate because when I'm sitting there with a client who may go to bits, they may be in the midst of crisis and things of that nature, I can rely on training that I've had because I've had to go through that training in order to acquire the letters that are after my name. So I have never been able to have a real deep conversation with someone who identified that they were a life coach to learn what their process is. So because I'm ignorant to what, in fact, they go through, I can't speak to it. But I do have a sneaky suspicion that it does not have the rigors that we go through. And it's not to be, I'm not trying to slight anybody.
No.
I think that we all are trying to do very good work. But I do think it's something to be said about how we arrived.
Let me add this to that as well. Therapy is about a process. We're process driven. Where maybe life coaching is about an outcome. Right? If I'm working on my goals, do this, and get the goal. And maybe you get the goal. And
But at
maybe,
what cost?
But at what cost? Whereas for us, we're a process which leads to a goal. We're not driven by a goal. So thank you for that because I hadn't thought about what you said. I may now look at it differently. I am ignorant to it. For me, it's all about our profession. I love what we do.
I guess we got to do mine now.
Yes.
What'd you pull?
I got a tried and true favorite, bipolar. And this one has air quotes It has air quotes. So I'll give a little history, and I'll be a little quicker with mine because I know we've been chatting it up for a bit. Bipolar is a modern term that comes from manic depressive. So the manic part being that a person experiences mania being a unique experience of, in some cases, euphoria that can extend too long, causing a person to eventually maybe have a psychotic break. And typically a manic episode ends in a hospitalization. And as a result, that's one way of demarcating that the person has in fact had it. You typically don't just kind of like, just get tired and then stop being manic. But that said, bipolar in our manuals actually has two types. There's bipolar 1, which features the mania, and then there's bipolar 2, which features hypomania, doesn't typically end in hospitalizations, and is more about a person's baseline than about when they go to any extremes. The baseline tends to be a little bit higher, so whereas most people are kind of running here, someone who's bipolar 2 will experience things up here, and then when they have depressive episodes, they feel like they fell off a cliff, because instead of falling from here, which is hard and a lot of people struggle with, they fall from up here, and therefore that kind of gives access to, there was something more going on here before this depressive episode. But the version of it that is a buzzword, it's got nothing to do with any of that. Oh no, it is watered down, it is decontextualized, it is simplistic, and it is so ignorant. When people call,
how do you really feel? Yeah, for real.
Well, I'm just saying, when people call people bipolar because they had mood swings, it is laughable, because over the course of the day, all of us have shifts in our moods and our emotions.
I can have shifts between a golf swing.
Right. So when you reduce a clinical term such as bipolar to a singular potential symptom of it, it is one of the laziest things we could ever do. And whenever I hear it, I have a visceral reaction to it. Yes, I'm speaking about this with great disdain in my heart, because it's
coming through.
Annoying.
Yeah. Clearly.
It is so annoying. It's like calling someone depressed after they had a bad day. That level of annoying for me.
Is it just me, Craig, or is Johnny acting a little bipolar?
So yes, I'm glad we had this as a buzzword, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue following it. But yes, I will let you know when it comes to using clinical terms out of context and in a watered down fashion. That is one of the easiest ways to get me off my square.
Yeah. Well, but bipolar use out of context is similar to a narcissist. A lot of things get used out of context. It becomes easier to describe what you do. Let me take it back. It becomes easier to describe how I feel about what you do.
How I feel about what you do. Mm-hmm. Let me label you based on how I feel.
Yeah, it's easier.
Say more what you mean about it. That's an interesting idea.
You act a certain kind of way, say something, and I'm hurt by it. Mm-hmm. Well, you're bipolar.
I see. Yeah.
But it's just that I'm hurt by it. And I'm okay. It's okay to be hurt by it.
It is okay.
Right? Or you act in a certain kind of way that I didn't see coming. I wasn't prepared for. Right? Kids in school, adults, whatever. She's bipolar. Why? Because she did this and then she did that, or he did this. They did it. Okay, that doesn't make them bipolar. How do you feel about what they did? Well, I don't like it. I think it's immature. Oh, so it's more about your feeling than the other. Yeah. Okay, I got it now. So it's contextual. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you all see as the downside of it becoming this? And it's often I hear it used in this very casual way where it's like just to the point you're making before, if like someone who's moody or if with other diagnostic terms too, like ADHD, or I'm feeling so, I'm being so ADHD, or the OCD one's a big one. Like I'm so OCD when like they're, just kind of like really particular about needing things a certain way. I don't think they often mean it like they actually have that disorder. Maybe sometimes they do, but
that's the problem with using the term the way.
Because I think the negative side or the downside is because it's used in the manner it's used. Mm-hmm. Should somebody really, really have bipolar disorder?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
The possibility is they actually won't seek treatment or won't accept medication because I don't want to be seen as bipolar.
It actually enforces stigma. And with bipolar in particular.
I don't like the word stigma.
You don't like it.
To me, stigma is more about somebody else's tolerance or lack thereof.
But that's hitting at exactly what you're getting at, which is how do I feel about what you did?
Right.
That's what stigma ultimately ends up being, is this concept of if you go get help, is something wrong with you. Duh. Like, that's why I went and got help. I knew something was wrong. I wasn't handling things the way I wanted to handle it, so I thought that it might be useful to get a professional person to assist me in it. So you're going to give me crap about that?
Yes, I am.
You're going to make me feel like I'm somehow less than because I said I need help?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for letting me know about you, because that tells me more about you than it tells me about myself. But the thing about bipolar in particular, I think that stands out more so than maybe other diagnostic terms that are used out of context like ADHD or OCD, is the medication aspect. It is known that people who struggle with bipolar need medication. They need a mood stabilizer.
Yeah.
So when you say to someone, because they had a shift in their mood, that they're bipolar, you are also implying, if not stating verbatim, you need meds. And saying that you need psych meds is a different kind of attack. It's a different kind of way to put somebody down. Is it to say that people who need psych meds need to feel like they're under attack or they're less than? No. But when you use a single potential symptom, notice I said potential symptom. It's not even the case that it may be the symptom, because if everybody's mood shifts throughout the course of a day, that's not a great barometer around whether or not a person has a diagnosis. Right. But if with that label comes this other part of it about medication, now you're going even deeper into it. Yeah,
that's an interesting point too. And I think if people haven't been around someone who's in a manic episode, so with bipolar 1, who haven't witnessed it, it's not subtle. It's quite extreme. It's very it's dangerous.
Right.
And then when it ends and shifts into the depression period, it's very dangerous. Can really damage people's lives. And like you said, it very often will end in a hospitalization when they get it. So it's a really, it's a very serious thing that has a real impact on people's lives. And people can thrive and have great lives if they have a bipolar. But it's something that really needs to be managed almost always with the medication if it's a bipolar
almost
1.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
So I typically frown upon using therapeutic terms as a way of talking about people and labeling people, because it does have real consequences. I think it does deter some people from going to get help if they truly need it. I think that when you use something as a blanket statement and continue to roll it out time and time again because something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, it tells a lot more about you and your ability to process things than it does about that person that you may be thrusting your feelings upon.
What do you got, Craig?
Well, we probably have a ton of buzzwords in the bowl, but there was one that we definitely wanted to talk about. And I did a little research on this one, gaslight.
Gaslighting, yes.
The term that we hear so much these days.
Favorite.
What does it mean? And then how do people use it? Interestingly enough, the term dates back to a movie back in the 1930s, late 30s, early 40s. The movie was Gaslight.
Okay, the movie Gaslight.
He said I wasn't any liquor. He said I was going out of my mind.
You're not going out of your mind. You're slowly and systematically being driven out of your mind.
But why? Why? If I were not mad, I could have helped you. Whatever you had done, I could have pitied and protected you.
The simple definition of it, because I pulled it. Gaslighting is a deliberate and complex means of intentionally controlling an individual carried out over an extended period of time. So it's intentional, deliberate, right? So I'm in essence, you are trying to create a situation when you gaslight of creating doubt in another person.
Yeah, it's just convincing them to deny their own reality. Yeah, as a manipulation tool.
It is. The biggest place, what we see it a lot of times is it creates the doubt, misuse, and has the other person questioning their opinions. A lot of times, one of the things that I found in it was one of the biggest misuses in gaslighting is if you have a very strong opinion and you're expressing that opinion to me, you're not gaslighting me. You're expressing your opinion, because this is a one-on-one single conversation we're having.
Right.
That's not gaslighting.
Right.
But because you have a strong opinion and I don't have one or don't have an opinion or I don't have a strong conviction, as we say with everything else, I'm going to label you a gaslighter when that's really not the case. So it gets misused because, as we've said to this point, it's much more convenient to label something than to do some reflection. So
and I think with the gaslight part of the word, you said it's the title of the movie, and I think in the movie, and I think it was a play too, that it was the guy who was gaslighting, in this case, manipulating his wife. He was trying to steal something from her, like her family fortune or jewels or something. So he kept looking for it in the house. So he would convince her of all of these things, and one of them would be, I guess, with at that time with like the gas lights, powered lights, like when you would turn one on, the other ones would dim,
and
or
he was
something
making
like
noises
that.
in the house to make her question herself.
And she would bring it up, and he would just he would attribute it to this psychosis that he was that he was trying to like convince her that she had. So I think that's it. Particularly where where it comes from.
That is both.
It's interesting how it's stuck like that.
The actual definition of the term and its proper use it makes it a lot more palatable for me, because when I first started hearing it, I started hearing it out of left field. I started hearing it in sessions. I started hearing it in passing conversations. And I'm just like, where did this come from? Because I grew up, I went through all my clinical training. I never heard the term.
Yeah, I don't know what made it come up more recently.
Like, did somebody just watch the movie and was like, hey, this is good. This movie, this really captures the idea.
Let's start using the term. Yeah.
Let's start, because I legitimately didn't hear the word gaslight before I turned 30, and I'm 38 now. So I would probably maybe I need to get out more.
It's probably a newer term, less than 5, max 8 years.
But it's from the 30s.
The movie's from the 30s, but the use of the term and the way it's being used is a very recent thing.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to people, but it's 2024, so it's almost 100 years old. This term is almost 100 years old.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. That
time is passing.
That just
you just sent me into an existential spiral right there.
I'm just saying,
we're all gonna die.
The term is basically 100 years old, and now it is coming to this world, and it is being used to describe anytime there's a disagreement or a difference of opinion about an experience, and that's really problematic.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you all, this is a little bit different thing. I kind of like the term. To me, it's almost like the term like Schadenfreude or something, where it's like you never think you would need a term until you hear it, and it's like, oh yeah, like Schadenfreude is like taking pleasure. It's
used accurately, I like the term too.
Like taking pleasure in someone else's pain. I think that's what Schadenfreude means. But it speaks to something that is like a real thing that people can do and happen that would never like have that kind of pithy word. So there's something I like about it. Now it's often the way it's misused can be kind of gross in the way you're talking about, where it's like, if someone disagreed with me or they're pushing back against, whatever nonsense I was doing or something, that you hear it used a lot in this way, like, oh, they're trying to gaslight me, or I was being gaslit. Yeah. Which again it's this kind of thing of like, it lets me off the hook for anything. I'm not involved really. It's
call
like, this
the
is this
thing
terrible
what
person.
it is. That's all I ask. Call the thing what it is.
But it may be that we use the term because it's convenient, right? And what it actually really does, the other side is, it takes away the opportunity for debate.
Every time.
That's right. Yeah, yes.
Every time. Because if you don't share my views and opinions on this, you are against me. And you are trying to manipulate me.
We're not going there, but that's our political rhetoric today. But continue your point. We're not going political.
Nope, not today. Not today.
We could,
because everybody needs therapy. Everybody needs therapy.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting thing that I had come up recently with. I think it was more than one client actually. I was working with anxiety and working towards like kind of externalizing the anxiety and being able to relate to it in a different way. So as is often the case with anxiety, there's this chronic worrying and a lot of this catastrophizing, jumping to all these conclusions and black and white thinking and everything. That's very common features of anxiety typically. And she came up with this thing where, so she was externalizing it almost as like this anxiety, something outside of myself, not identifying it with as much, and would use this thing of like, oh, like this is this anxiety trying to gaslight me, which was helpful. I kind of liked because it's like it's trying to convince me of this thing that's not true and make
Again,
me
that's
question
accurate
the
use
thing.
of it.
So and there's something about that kind of undercut the thing, which I mean, this is just like a weird anecdote
Yeah.
that's not super applicable, but that came up recently that I was thinking about. I thought it was really cool. I was like, damn, I like that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Because you personified it. You took it out of yourself. She took it away from
Something
her.
she possesses that she can put down. That's
Yeah.
what anxiety and other emotional experiences can be. But obviously, we got other buzzwords that we did not get to today. There probably will be a part 2. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, we just wanted to tackle these. We wanted to just give these words some history, some meaning, some value, so they can be used properly. Because all these words, or I know that life coach is not just a word; it's also someone's profession. But like all of them have a context in which they are useful and helpful, and we rather encourage that than condemn the words, because the words aren't the issue, it's how we use them, just like most things. So hopefully you got something from this.
Yeah. I just think the only thing I would add to that, I like that. Ask questions.
Please.
Create a definition for what you're using it.
What do you mean
what
by
do you
what
mean
you
by
are
it?
saying?
Yeah.
What do you mean by it? Call
all.
things what they are.
So I got a little segment I was thinking about of like, I don't know what I'll call it. Ancient wisdom, maybe like a jingle or something. Ancient wisdom. We could share little things. I'm very interested in a lot of these older traditions and like that just kind of perennial wisdom from there. So what I pulled from today is, maybe one of my favorite books of all time, which is the Tao Te Ching, particularly the translation by Stephen Mitchell. So I pulled one verse from here, just something to contemplate. So this is verse 9. It goes like this. Fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it'll blunt. Chase after money and security and your heart will never unclench. Care about people's approval and you will be their prisoner. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity.
Beautiful.
Oh.
I love it when Matt gets ideas about segments.
Okay.
The Tao Te Ching's no joke, man.
I mean, I'd like to say put it on a T-shirt. People can't read that fast, but wow.
It's a hell of a verse.
I think the last part, do your work and step back. That's a T-shirt right there.
Honestly, I would not have a problem finding a T-shirt press. Look, forget that. I don't want to press. The good ones, embroider those bad boys.